So we are here with Terry Butler, who spent a lot of time playing in Death, and the purpose of this interview is to remember your time that you spent with Death.
Sure.
You came to Death from Massacre,
Yes.
which was a band with former Death members. So
Yeah.
what ideas of Death did you have even prior to joining the band?
All right. Well, it's funny. You know, I first met Chuck at a place called Ruby's in Tampa. That's where Nasty Savage always played. It was like '84. He was walking around with a little baggie of cassettes, and it was the Mantis demo.
Mm-hmm.
Bought it from him. We just talked about music a little bit. I had no idea. Like 3 years later, I'd be in a band with him. You know, and obviously I knew all about Death, their demos, and all that stuff. So we were in Massacre, and Bill Andrews heard that Cam Lee was in town, and he wanted him to sing in his band because he liked his vocals from when he was in Mantis. Then Rick came into the band. Alan West, you know, he was released from the band. Rick Ross came in. They did a couple demos, and at a point we were going to open for Megadeth in like '86, in early '87, and Rick met a buddy that knew Chuck, mutual friend. He said, "Hey, Chuck's in town. He's got no band. You know, he lived out in California with Chris Reifert, but he moved back." So of course Rick went over there, you know, to network right off the bat,
Yeah.
to Chuck's house, knocked on his door, and he's like, you know, anyhow. So he's like, "Hey, I heard you have no band, blah blah. We're not doing anything." So basically, Massacre kind of joined with Death. We went to Chuck's house and we kind of rehearsed, you know, like 5 songs, and he said it sounds killer. So we were together, you know.
How did you feel about those songs? Because at that point, Chuck came in with a already recorded album.
Yeah.
He had everything ready. Basically, you came in, you learned the material, and performed that. So how did you feel about those songs?
How did I feel about
Yeah.
them? They were great. I mean, I love Death. You know, had the Land of No Return demos, all the other demos, Power of Darkness, whatever. And so I was familiar with the style, and I actually had the album when it came out. You know, it had been out for like a month before we started, you know, rehearsing with them. So just joined forces, and about a month later we played Milwaukee Metal Fest.
Now, was that the first show
think-
of that lineup?
I'm pretty sure that was the very first show.
I was actually
I
there.
remember on the plane
Yeah.
in my head going over the bass, you know, going over the rhythms, because we had been together for like 3 weeks. You know.
Well, the fun thing about that show, and I was there actually, was that you showed up unannounced. You were not on a flyer. You were not
Yeah, it was kind
meant
of
to be. So it was a big surprise.
Someone canceled, I think, and we were at it or something. Yeah. Yeah.
What was it like to actually play your first show at a huge, and probably the only festival in this country at that time?
Oh, I mean, it was a bit scary. I mean, you know, there's 3,000 people out there, whatever. In Massacre, I played a handful of shows. We actually did a small tour up the East Coast of like 5 shows, but you know, there's like 200 people there. But I mean, it was great. You know, I've never been too afraid to play live because I know it's in my head, you know, and so I played it, and it was great. Like I said, it was a little scary and awesome at the same time.
So how much more touring did happen for Scream Bloody Gore with that lineup?
We played a couple shows around the Orlando area, Tampa area, like at a place called Sunset Club. But we did a tour, the Scream Bloody Gore tour, Scream Bloody Tour we called it. It was kind of up the East Coast, a little bit into the Midwest. I think it was about 15 shows. And we did that, and you know, then we did 2 or 3 tours for Leprosy. 3 tours for Spiritual.
What was it like to be in a band with Chuck? I mean, you knew him before because you bought a demo of him, but what was he like to be in the band with?
Well, I mean,
at that
the
time?
early days especially, it was great. You know, we all got along. There was no problems. I mean, you know, he was always a little...
We'll get to that.
He was always a little diva-like and eccentric, you know, but a lot of artists are, you know, and it was no problem. We got along great. You know, we'd go to record shopping together. We had a great time. We'd goof around. It was great. But I mean, you know, always knew that this was his band because obviously it was his band, you know. I mean, we signed on to the label and everything, but it was Chuck's band ultimately. But even till the end, I got along with him great.
So when it came time to write for what became Leprosy, what did that process look like? Were you allowed to contribute anything?
Yeah.
I mean, what?
We actually, I think we may have started playing one of the songs from Leprosy on the Scream tour. If not, we were doing it at soundcheck. Maybe it was Pull the Plug. I can't.
You did because when you played in Chicago, January '88 with Syndrome,
Yeah.
You already did pull the plug.
Yeah, I knew there was at least one or two we already
Yeah.
had, and Chuck, when he got on the roll, we'd practice, and when we get to practice, like, hey, I got 2 new songs, holy shit, I mean, you're busting them out, so, and Rick contributed, I wasn't quite either confident or whatever yet. Spirituals, when I helped write 4 songs on that, but if I had rhythms, they would have been welcomed, Yeah.
What was the recording process like for Leprosy?
It was at Morris Sound, Dan Johnson, Scott Burns engineered. It was great. We were there for a long time, like a month, and it was great.
How long did it take you to complete that album?
I think we were there maybe 3 weeks at Morris Sound. Yeah.
Now, once Leprosy came out, you were kind of up to bigger and better things. How did things go from
Well, it
that
just started
point on?
taking off.
Yeah.
Definitely. But like when Death was signed, the inside liner says, I think it says it's Don K's Folly or someone's Folly. I mean, if you remember that.
Yeah.
Basically, so they wanted Death to sign to that boot camp series. Do you remember that?
Yes, the
Basically, it was a demo
camouflage
pressed on
CD, yeah.
vinyl, and Chuck said, "No way, I'm not doing that." So he held out until they finally signed a actual record contract, and recorded that and everything. But it took off, by Leprosy, because we had done a tour, we started doing press. People started catching on. I mean, everyone in the underground, over from Europe to Japan, everyone, they knew the name Death, obviously, but a little more on the not commercial side. But we started picking up some press and like the magazines, and it started taking off.
Now, one big tour that you did at that time, actually, not only a tour but also a video, was the Ultimate Revenge
Yes.
2.
Yeah.
What memories do you have from that?
Great memories. I mean, Dark Angel we're huge fans of, and Raven. I mean, a lot of people probably didn't like that they were on that, but we grew up with them, so we loved
Oh, yeah.
it, But it was a great feeling, sold out show, and it was just an awesome feeling to be part of it. Everyone stayed in the same hotel, and everyone kind of room to room partying and everything. That's when I first met the guys at Forbidden, and it was a good time.
And then you ended up touring with Dark Angel.
Yes.
What was that tour like?
Not so good.
All right.
Well, basically, we were promised that it was going to be co-headlining, and it wasn't. And their crew kind of treated us pretty bad. And one thing about Chuck is he always stood up for himself and the band. It was always about that. So halfway through the tour, he just blew up and had enough, and we came home. We're out in Utah, had to drive all the way home. But it was only because they were dissing us. They were treating us like shit, basically. And he had enough, so we came home. The shows we played were great for the fans.
Yeah.
There were a lot of packed shows.
Yeah, I remember Chicago. I mean, that was an intense show.
It was great.
Yeah, Cubby Bear.
Oh man, 1,000 degrees in there, but it was great.
Now, also, around that time, some trouble was happening with Rick. What went wrong? Why did he leave or was pushed out of the band?
Well, we did the 2 tours in the States, Leprosy, and we were starting to gear up, thinking about writing for Spiritual Healing, starting to get that going. In fact, I think again we may have had one song worked out or half of a song worked out while Rick was still in the band. But it just came to a point. Rick he left town when we were supposed to be kind of getting together writing riffs, and he told Chuck he would take his guitar with him and practice and this and that, and Chuck found out he was with some chick or something.
Okay.
It's just Chuck, sometimes he just would make snap decisions. Dude, you're out, whatever, So he was out, and we actually played in Mexico 2 nights, and Paul Masvidal filled in.
That's right.
And a little bit after that's when we started writing for Spiritual.
How did you feel about Rick leaving?
Well, I mean, if it was up to me, I wouldn't have done it. I mean, because whatever. But I wasn't the leader of the band, so to speak, But Chuck also was kind of evolved. Each album was an evolution musically, and I think he thought maybe Rick was not going to be able to do the stuff that he wanted to do, the more technical side of things.
Sure.
So I think that coincided with Rick kind of leaving town to go on a vacation. That's what I was told. from Chuck, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that to get to Rick, but I mean, that's, you know, that combination, and he was out, you know, and then we had a search for a guitar player.
And how did you find James?
I actually
James
had,
Murphy.
I had met him a year or two before at that same club in Tampa, Sunset, and I had kept in touch with him. In fact, he had done a tour in Europe with Agent Steel.
That's right.
And he came home, and then he actually joined Hallows Eve, and I had his phone number. And I told Chuck, dude, I know a shredding guitar player that could do this stuff easily. And he's like, oh yeah. So I told him about James. So he said, well, give me the number. He called James right there. We were all standing in Chuck's kitchen. Kind of just, you know, said, hey, would like for you to come try for the band. And James knew all about that anyhow. He was very receptive. So he's like, all right, I'll be there in about a week, you know. So the following week he showed up, and we kind of ran through a song or two, and it was perfect.
What kind of vibe did James bring into the band?
Well, to me, I was just blown away that we were playing heavy music like that. And I had never heard it myself in death metal yet. And he just came in with these shredding leads. And it kind of kicked up the music writing, you know. It charged up Chuck, you know, like to try and maybe not to top James, but to kind of match him as far as technical skill and stuff. And that's why from Leprosy to Spiritual, there's a little more, couple steps up as far as the scales and stuff. And
how would you describe that songwriting process?
It was great. We rehearsed in a little mini warehouse. It was like 105 degrees. we rehearsed 2 or 3 songs and open the door and come back in about 10 minutes later. But it was great. We were a pretty close unit. You know, we'd go there on the weekend and hang out at Chuck's house, rehearse, write songs, and come back during the week. And up until we left to go record at Morrison, you know, it was great.
Then again, the album comes out and is a big hit. You get to headline this time.
Yeah.
What was that like?
It was great. Very good reception.
I mean, what memories do you have from that?
Awesome
that tour?
memories. We were getting, you know, we're getting clips from the label, from all the magazines around that loved the album, and you know, they thought it was great. And the tour was great. Our first tour was Devastation in the States. Yeah. It was a great tour. Then we did another tour. Well, unfortunately, at the end of that tour, James
we'll get to that.
Was released from the band.
Yeah, I mean, I was extremely surprised when James left the band. And under what circumstances did he leave the band?
James is, you know, like I said, to me, these artists that are amazing all have a little something to them that's not quite the same as everyone else. And I'm not saying that in a bad way at all. No. You know, and James didn't fit in with us 100% as far as he was a little quirky, and I think that really rubbed Chuck the wrong way. And it just came to a boiling point when we got almost at the end of the tour out in California. Chuck had enough, and just told him he was out. You know, just little things built up, and Chuck. Again, it was a band decision, but myself, I would have waited till we were at home another week before I did that myself. But
you think things could have improved and James could have maintained being in the band?
I just think it was maybe me, Chuck, and Bill had been together for 3 years, and we clicked so good, and James, you know, was trying to get into that click, and it just didn't kind of work. And Chuck, and also it may have been an ego thing. Chuck never told me, but you know, James is an incredible guitar player.
He sure is.
A lot of people on the tour were like, I'm not saying praising him, but he got a lot of notice.
And rightfully so.
Yeah, he's great. Great guitar player.
He was outstanding. I mean, even before the album came out.
I still listen to it. It's incredible.
When you did that show in Milwaukee before the album came out at that Milwaukee Metal Fest, the December version of it, and that was the first show with James. I mean, he was unbelievable how good he was.
Absolutely.
Even with the old songs,
the whole tour.
You know, what he added.
Absolutely.
Now, there was another leg of that tour, but it was done with
Robert Gonzalez.
Robert Gonzalez
he
from,
was in
from Evil Dead.
I had met him at that Milwaukee Metal Fest.
Yep, because they played there.
And we exchanged phone numbers, and then I knew we needed another guitar player. You know, the tour was coming up in a couple of weeks, so I called him, and the label sent him out, you know, some CDs, and we told him we made a set list about 14 songs, learned these songs, and he did. And he did a great job. He's a great guitar player as well. He came on the road. But Chuck, his mindset at this point was a little different. There was like, we actually had 3 or 4 months off in between those 2 tours, which we had started writing Human. About 3 or 4 songs we actually started rehearsing. And but towards the end of that tour, Chuck started kind of getting, a little complacent with death metal, and he he just fell apart at the end. He didn't want to do it anymore, And we had a week off, and we go to headline, not co-headline, but open for Creator in Europe, and we had everything, 100% billing too.
So you finished that second leg, U.S. tour with Albert, and then a big European tour, probably co-headlining with Creator, who really was riding high at that time.
9-week tour. It was huge.
9-week tour, probably first major European tour, and that's when things just stopped.
I mean,
so what happened?
We had a merch all already made. Creator's crew were like 10 people. They would have been out of work. I mean, it was a huge thing. Anyhow, so we got home. We had a week off, and we were going to get together with Walt Traxler. He was going to play second guitar, so we were going to rehearse with him, like 2 or 3 shows. Well, Chuck kind of he went AWOL. He locked himself in his house.
So when did you find out Chuck's not going to do that tour?
Well, so Walt stopped at his house on the way. He drove from Texas to Tampa. He stopped by Chuck's house. Chuck wouldn't answer the door. He heard Merciful Fate music playing. He knew Chuck was in there, but he wouldn't answer the door. So he called me, kind of panicking. He's like, dude, just come to my house. I'll tell you what's going on. So anyhow, we contacted our booking agent. He contacted Creator's management. We all kind of agreed that we had a paper drawn up, and we all signed it, even Chuck, saying that we were going to go to Europe without him. And whatever happened over there, he's not responsible for. You know what I mean? Like, if it's a disaster or whatever, he's not going to be responsible for it. He signed off on it. I still have the paper home. He didn't want to do the tour. He wanted to stay home. He had the mindset that if you turn your back on things, about 3 or 4 months later, everyone forgets about it. But this was so huge, and me and Bill were like, God, this thing's been planned for 4 months.
I mean, you worked up to this
huge thing. So we just figured, you know what? Hey, we got to do it.
So who was in the band at that time?
Walt played guitar.
Yep.
And Louie, the drummer of Devastation, he met us at the airport. He's going to be the drum tech. He had no idea. I told him, you're going to sing on this tour. I was like, what? He was like, holy shit. But we knew it wasn't going to be Death, obviously. And
We're all the gang members now?
but we were determined to do it because we felt at the time for our career that was the best thing to do. If we cancel that huge tour, who knows? We might, I don't know what's going to go on. Death might not ever be a band again. Then me and Bill are trying to get another band going, and you got the reputation of canceling tour. You know what I mean? It's just so, in hindsight, was it still the best thing to do? I guess maybe. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't know.
How did the fans in Europe react to
Well,
that?
the first few shows, it was like, what the fuck's going on? But I think word kind of started spreading, that Chuck was on the tour, and a couple rumors were around that he didn't want to do the tour, that he was sick or whatever. We never said anything. Walt, which I wish he wouldn't have done, got on the mic one time and said, F Chuck, So, that started happening. I didn't want him to do it, but he did.
Come to think of it, it's a miracle you pulled it off.
I know, we did. We had 2 we had 2 days before the tour started. We had just got in the hotel room, and Bill had pillows as drums, and we worked it out. Spent hours each day until we got 12 songs down.
Now, that tour was obviously the end of your association with Death. So what happened? How did that end?
Yeah, we knew that. Me and Bill knew that even before that. When we were flying over to Europe, we're like, okay, this is it. So we caught wind towards the end of that tour that Rick and Cam had started talking with Earache. They already had Massacre kind of going, some version of it. But Earache was interested to sign them, and we found that out and whatever. And I told Bill, let's just get back with those dudes, record all the demo stuff, make it a first album, and then write a new album. And we did From Beyond, and then it was such a nice record, a big hit, not a big hit, but it caught on, people liked it. So then we did the Inhuman Condition EP, which has 2 older songs and then a new one on there. And then we were actually going to start writing another one, but it, of course, fell apart.
Now, did you ever have any contact with Chuck after that tour?
Actually, no.
No? What kind of feelings were there?
Well, of course, I was upset and sad that happened, but I was also mad because he started talking bad about us
I noticed that.
And I'm
yes.
sure we started talking bad about him too. That's common. I mean, that's human, human nature. But after years gone by, I wish I had talked to him. One time, about '96, we were playing a show, and Chuck's girlfriend at the time, I think it was her brother, was in a band that opened for us. And he gave me a piece of paper that she had written through Chuck saying, a couple funny sayings that we used to say in the band. So I knew it was legitimate. And it had a phone number on there. Well, I sat on it for about 2 or 3 months, contemplating should I call this number or not. And by the time I called it, it was out of order.
Do you have any regrets not kind of making peace with Chuck?
Of course. Yes. Yeah. In fact, at another different Milwaukee Metal Fest, Death played and 6 Feet Under were playing. There was a huge common room with everyone in it. And I saw him over there. And I saw him kind of working his way over towards me, and I just left. I chickened out. And I don't know. I just didn't want to deal with that right there. I should have.
So when you look back, how do you feel? How do you look back on your years with Death? The music,
fondly,
the shows.
Fondly. I mean, I got to help write Spiritual Healing, and to being. I mean, at the time, when we were doing Scream Bloody Gore tour, we weren't thinking, oh, this is an iconic band. Years later, we're going to be looked at in a certain way. We were just in a band playing shows. But it's a great feeling to look back on it. Know that you might have helped forge a path for some other bands, as far as, because think about it, in '87, what death metal bands were touring? You know what I mean?
No.
Not many at all.
No.
So I kind of feel like maybe we helped some of the bands, kind of give them confidence in whatever. We can do this too,
Now, recently there was a anniversary show in Florida. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and how did it go?
Yeah, well, I was contacted, and James was contacted by a couple people. Basically, they're huge Death fans. And they had contacted the family, and they had contacted Eric Greif, rest in peace. And it was a legitimate thing. He said, hey, I want to put on a Death Spiritual Healing show, back-to-back nights in Tampa. And James and I talked about it, and we're like, okay, let's do it. So obvious choice was Matt Harvey. And then Gus Rios got on board. He was totally down with it. So we rehearsed, and then it kind of steamrolled. They got Symbolic to play, which is, a bunch of people, DiGiorgio, Bobby Cope, all them. So,
all the veterans.
All the shredders in one band. So it was great. It was a great night. 2 sold-out nights in Tampa. It was a great feeling. A lot of the organizers had some memorabilia there, handwritten lyrics, guitars, and all that stuff. So it was a nice thing for the fans to walk around and look at, and it was a good experience, definitely.
Yeah. How did you feel the fans were reacting? Because I'll bet there were a lot of people who were not even born when those albums came out.
There's a ton of Death fans that weren't even born when, but it was a great reaction. You walk around and meet everyone, and they come up to you and you talk to them and autograph whatever they have and everything. So that's the experience we wanted. Yeah.
Well, one of the oddest feelings that I came across was during one of those Death to All shows when there was a little bit of an intermission and the fans started to chant, "Thank you, Chuck, thank you, Chuck." I was like, if he was here to enjoy that moment, I mean, what a,
They were chanting his name during that. It's great, Like I said, at the time, I'm sure he wasn't thinking, okay, I'm going to write music that 20 years later is going to be like so, immortalized, basically, And I think he would be fond of it if he knew that was happening. Yeah.
And finally, when you look back at all of it, how do you feel the Death's legacy is being taken care of?
I thought once Eric Greif got involved, he got the ship righted, and now that he's not with us anymore, I'm hoping that the ship stays on. So, but as far as musically, it's like Chuck's created basically a genre, of music. So,
finally, what is the one thing you miss about Chuck the most?
Actually hanging out on tour in a hotel room, watching something on TV and laughing at it and just having a good time. Just being friends. That's, we loved it.
Thank you for sharing your memories.
Thank you.
Thank you.